Wow. Let me first of all thank our keynote speaker for what I think has been a very insightful, data driven presentation. You just made our job a whole lot easier. Thank you for helping me in particular to lay the canvas of what we're going to be talking about. You've made my job very easy. I think I have the easiest job here today. And I'm also very happy to be moderating this keynote panel. We have a very solid team of experts who will be helping us to unpack the keynote lecture that we just had. They've been introduced, and I like the flavor of where they cover from legal. It's too late for me to be a lawyer. The two next persons to me are lawyers, but one of them is a lawyer in should I say in business, and the other one is a lawyer in practice. So we get a good flavor of legal perspective, both from law policy and also from practice. And then the two wonderful ladies to my far left, they are not lawyers, and I'm sure they are glad that they are not lawyers. It will be a dull world if we are all lawyers. But together we will be looking a bit more closely at the issue of empowering our future, our energy future. And we'll be looking at it from the lens of policy. We'll be looking at it from the lens of innovations and technology. And we'll be looking at it from the lens of resilience. And I think one of the key points made by the speaker is how fragile for our own country in particular, our energy landscape is. How fragile in terms of what it becomes if we get exposed to a shock. So hopefully we'll be able to do that within the first part, and then leave the second part for you to ask your questions, and then we will try to address as much of that as we can. So I'm going to start first with the first person, which is our learned colleague from Templars, Dayo. Let's talk about roles. What role do you see policy planning or policy playing in balancing the energy needs of a growing economy like Nigeria? And especially from the backdrop of energy sustainability. Please, would you like to share some of your thoughts and experience as a lawyer in this area with us?
Thank you. Thank you for that. Policy is key. Is the underpinning for what we need to do. And I like to look at it from two ways. It's the will to make the policy, regulation, and law.
Okay.
But all of you are in-house. You would have heard lawyers say, this is the law and this is the practice. Enforcement is usually very far away from it. So we start from that underpinning, but I would like to say, at least from where I sit in practice, we're seeing slow progress. Let's start with policy. If we speak on energy and from a power perspective, we have an Electricity Act of 23.
Right.
We have seen some innovations in the sense of incentives. The fact that they've streamlined the licensing regime for renewable power license obtaining. We've also seen, and also it's streamlining under also the Electricity Act of pushing in renewable power into the grid, be it the larger grid, so to speak, or smaller mini grids that we are seeing. How does that play into things? Our keynote speaker spoke on something, and while he was saying that, it was a bit funny because it's the evolution. I'll talk power, then I'll talk gas from a legal perspective.
Okay.
At Templars, we developed the project documentation for the Azura project.
Okay.
And we thought there was going to be a whole lot of work after that. Of those 14 PPAs, we advised on 7 of them. Nothing happened. They were parked. Then what were the power lawyers supposed to do? We're twiddling our thumbs. And then we started seeing the market shift. right, to the aggregation, franchising, and the mini grids. You mentioned solar. We're still a bit of far away, but I am a conservative lawyer, but an optimistic Nigerian. You have to be if you're Nigerian. The Electricity Act and what we're seeing, and I'll end with this and on the PIA, what we're seeing is right now at Templars, we're involved in advising on what will be the first floating solar power project in Nigeria, offshore Lagos, 5 Cowrie Creek. It's a pilot project. It's a bit difficult. We expect it to come on stream in 2024. If you told me as an energy lawyer 15, 18 years ago when I did the Akute project, I would have laughed at you, said it's not going to happen in Nigeria. So we're seeing slow progress. Then I'll end on the PIA. The oil and gas people know also the same. You see the pessimism. The first time I advised on the PIA was in 2005. And then I said it will never pass. It's passed. I see a lot of people talking about what's wrong with it, but I'm a lawyer and I've practiced in different jurisdictions. Everybody in every jurisdiction complains about their laws. What are the positives? For me, and maybe that might be a segue into further discussions, a client of mine said something that I'll end with. The PIA is not an oil it's not an oil act, it's not a gas act, it's an infrastructure play, right? It opens up infrastructure for us to be able to use what we have, improve upon it, and we're seeing businesses like Aradel, other gas utilization businesses see this opportunity and kind of push the needle. And for me, that's kind of where I see the policy underpinning it, in that the Electricity Act gives a certain amount of certainty, and the PIA does as well. We also have to commercially enforce it,
Right.
To be able to see the sustainability that we strive for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dayo, for that. So we've seen policy on one side, and from what Dayo said and what our keynote speaker said, over the last 2 decades, we've actually seen a raft of policies that have come in. We had the ESPR, which is the precursor to the Electricity Act of 2023. We had the Petroleum Act, which then got overtaken by PIA. So we've always had policies, well-framed policies. But we've never seen that crystallizing into a critical mass of actions, a critical mass of investment. And that's the point that you has made. So I guess something is missing. And I'm going to be speaking to Yetunde to help us. What sort of mechanisms should we be looking at that then helps us to convert the intention of these policies to really full-blown investments that can help us on this journey of energy transition? What's missing? And I'm saying that to you as somebody who is now on the operator side, looking at your background from Total, and now you're in the aggregation side of business that you mentioned about how things are now moving to you. So you are the next person we should be speaking at. What are we missing by way of mechanisms to give life to all these policy initiatives that we're seeing?
So thank you, Gbite. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
There needs to be that industry and regulator relationship and collaboration. So it's not enough for someone to sit and write beautiful policies and dump it on the industry. It will never work that way. So we need to begin to acknowledge the need for hand-holding. Even at the drafting stage, there needs to be input, there needs to be open access. Nobody knows it all, whether it's the operator or the regulator. And it's been proven, even in recent times, that when you engage people prior to pushing out anything, they'll begin to have this sense of belonging.
Okay.
So even if they were not initially aligned with what you are putting forward, but the thought that you carried them along, you sought their opinions, you requested them to make inputs, they made clarifications. And in my view, that helps to ease the implementation. Of course, that's not all. We need a lot of sensitization too. So from where I sit, I see a lot of people who come and say, I have gas projects. I want to do this, I want to build this. And we give them a list. Do you have this, this? And they disappear. We don't see them for 1 year. And then they realize it's not a game. It's a serious business. You need to be aware. You need to have done your homework and your feasibility studies. And then they come back, oh, okay, now I'm ready. Where do I get this license? How do I get it? How long does it take? Which agency, is responsible for this? So we need that market sensitization. We also need to begin to institutionalize a feedback mechanism. So the authority is not God. The regulators are not God. They are market players too. They're sector participants. So there should be a way where every stakeholder can give feedback. I don't think it should end with the law. We should be able to say, okay, so far we have tried to implement this, but we got stuck. And the regulators should be able to come out and say, yes, actually we even missed it. We should have done this. We should have put this in place. And then we do a side letter. You do a review. There should be room for that. It's not one size fits all. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Yetunde. So essentially what you've clarified to us is that there is the bit around the stakeholder management in the build-up to policy formulation to ensure that critical inputs are onboarded. But there's also as much of that same effort that is needed even after policies have been formed in helping people to understand how to work those policies. You talked about sensitization, and thank you for that perspective. Today, there are not a few concerns around the implementation of the PIA, and people feel that a lot is not being done in hand-holding the process into implementation. Mr. Lonshola, I've been in places where you've talked about the governance of implementing PIA in itself, and I guess that's part of what is playing out now. And so for those who are in policy formulation, it's not just enough to form the policy, but the follow through in hand-holding the process and making sure it's well embedded is as important as what it took for us to formulate the policy. Yesterday, Prof, when you were speaking here, you talked about the 3 key elements that makes energy transition work. You spoke about the policy side, you spoke about economics, and you spoke about technology. And I'm going to come to Tony now to probe your mind as to where is the space for innovative and creative technology as we look at this issue of sustainable energy transition. Does it have any role to play? And in your own experience, if it does, what sort of experience, what sort of role does it have to play? And how can we allow or bring in creative and innovative technologies to give fillip to both policy and also the sensitization that Yetunde spoke about? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our keynote speaker. I think, once again, I want to lend my voice to say thank you because you really dealt with the key issues, right? And you've made our work easier. With respect to innovation, there's a lot of innovation that's happening globally now to drive energy transition. And actually, our keynote speaker had a slide that showed quite a lot of the technologies, that is being deployed globally. It's unfortunate that Nigeria is not anywhere close yet. I'm going to talk about some of the innovation that we are seeing, not just globally, but even in Africa. Number one is we're seeing the deployment of highly efficient gas turbines in combined cycle, up to about 64% efficiency. And basically what that means is that you're having gas turbines that burn the gas more efficiently, less emissions, and then provide more energy, produce more electricity for every molecule of gas that they burn. If you look at, for example, the gas turbines that we have installed in Nigeria today, they're all open cycle, right? There's an opportunity for us to close the cycle, get them more efficient, and get them to run better and produce less emission. So number one innovation I wanted to mention is highly efficient gas turbines. GE has we call it the H-class gas turbine. We're hoping to install in South Africa next year, 2 years from now, with the program, the gas to power program they're running. We're also installing in the Middle East and then in the US as well. The other innovation we're seeing quite a lot, we're also seeing carbon capture and sequestration. And basically what that means is that you can burn gas in your gas turbine, but you capture the carbon on the exhaust, on the exit of the gas turbine. And basically what you do is you capture it with a solvent, and then you either treat that carbon and use it in industries that require the carbon as part of their process, or you bury it in the ground. And basically what that means is you're cleaning out the footprint of the gas-fired generation, and that is seen as clean energy. I think for us in Nigeria, like our keynote speaker was saying, the topic for us is more energy access, right, than energy transition. And gas will still play a huge role. Gas is not going anywhere, not in the nearest future. I can tell you that even for countries in Europe, in the Americas, where there's massive penetration of renewable energy, they are realizing now that with their grid, and with up to 30% of their grid, up to 40% with renewables, the grid is becoming very, very unstable. And so with that, what they're doing is they're procuring more gas fire generation to stabilize their grid. We call it grid firming. They're using gas for grid firming, because also batteries have a limitation. You can't have batteries store energy for more than 4 hours, right? And then when the sun is down, when the wind is not blowing, then what happens? And if they've shut down their coal, now some of them are even reopening their coal plants, because they're realizing that renewables alone cannot provide the base load dispatchable power that they need. So the second innovation that like I mentioned is carbon capture and sequestration. The third one is we're also seeing a combination of gas and renewables, so hybrids. So rather than have gas as a standalone or have renewables as a standalone, now we're seeing more and more of countries and even players in the mining sector, for example, large intensive energy users, combining gas and renewables, so that when the renewable energy resource is there, they run on renewables. When the renewables are down, they switch on the gas, and that gas provides sort of like a smoothing factor for the renewables, because renewables will not always be there. You can't have 24 hours, 7 days round the clock power. You can't run a refinery on renewables, 100% solar. You can't run a cement plant on 100% of solar. So we believe that gas will continue to play a huge role, and Nigeria is very well positioned. I mean, we are sitting on gas that we have not even developed, so we will continue to have a huge role to play in the regional energy security, in the regional energy transition as well. The fourth one I'm going to mention, the fourth innovation, is around the utilization of a blend of hydrogen in power generation. I know that whenever we talk about hydrogen, people roll their eyes and they say, oh, it's a long time in coming. But I like the transition you showed, where solar was and where it is now, And as much as we roll our eyes and say, hey, hydrogen is a long time in coming, we need to watch it. As more financing is going into hydrogen and research around hydrogen, there is that potential for the pricing to come down. There is that potential for it, as we go along, for there to be new technologies to enhance, scalable, efficient production of hydrogen. It's sometime in coming, I think 10, 20 years down the line. But today, I can tell you that there are countries that are putting out tenders and requesting for every new power plant to have hydrogen capability, so that for the future, as hydrogen then becomes available in quantities that are required, as long as infrastructure is also there to store and to transport, whatever plants they are building today are future-proofed. and they can run in the future. So these are things for us to think about, as you think about energy transition for Nigeria as well. And then the last one I'm going to talk about in terms of innovation, by no means is this list exhaustive. It's just to let you know that there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of funding and a lot of research going into new technologies that can enhance energy transition globally. The last one I wanted to mention is about coal switching to gas, or diesel/HFO switching to gas. It's interesting because, for Nigeria, we have huge diesel plants. I can tell you that in my house, for example, I have more than one power plant. I have the primary one, I have the backup, and I can imagine that for a lot of us as well. For a lot of us as well, right? So I think, and it's part of the energy transition plan, it's clearly stated there that, one of the objectives and one of the focus is to switch the diesel, to get the diesels to switch off, and then potentially have all of our power needs provided by power on the grid. Policy has a huge role to play, implementation has a huge role to play, but as we talk about innovation, some countries are switching from coal, switching completely their coal plants, and in place of that, installing gas turbines and basically reusing some of the infrastructure, some boilers, and some of the existing infrastructure at that site, transiting them to gas. G is actually at the forefront of that. We are engaging quite a lot of stakeholders in South Africa, for example, because South Africa is at the forefront of energy transition actually in SSA, in Africa, and then also in Europe, we are working on quite a lot of coal to gas switching plants. So to round up, I just want to say the technology is there. We just need to make sure that we have the right policy to incentivize the investment in that technology and also have a will to implement those policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Toyin, for doing justice to the angle of technologies in our energy sustainability campaign. The problem we have is not about fuel, whether it is oil or gas. The problem we have is about carbon. And with technology, we can actually remove carbon from our oil and gas so we can continue to enjoy it. There are statistics that have actually shown that the highest emitter of carbon is not our oil and gas. Landfills emit more more carbon than our oil and gas. So nobody should try and emotionally blackmail us about what God has blessed us with. We should just, with clear, focused eyes, look for the technology that helps us to remove the carbon. It's a carbon problem we have. It's not an oil problem. It's not a gas problem. And with what G is doing and what many other technology-based companies are doing, please, we just want to encourage you, please keep doing that so that we can enjoy the benefit of our oil and gas. Now, maybe the concept around energy transition is gaining currency with us here in Nigeria, but in other places, they've started far ahead of us or long before we've done that. And I'd like to come to Amina. Amina, could you please share with us, have you seen cases of transitions that have taken place in other climes and how they have played out? And if there are one or two things we can learn from that.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for the question, is working. I chose, I would consider Norway. Because I'm very interested in Norway. I've been following, not only because 98.5% of its energy sources is from renewable energy. That's a combination of hydro and wind, but because we have something in common with it has something in common with Nigeria. It's also a major oil and gas player. Yes, I think 7th largest gas producer in the world, and other similarities. So what did Norway do right in the successful energy transition journey? And one thing that is very clear is the ownership by the government.
The government took responsibility for the energy transition. Didn't stop there. They involved the people. So in Norway, you would see, apart from, of course, the NDC, which is to reduce ambitious policies like the NDC, which is to reduce their emissions by 95% as at 2050, below their 1990 levels. You would also see targets being set by the government and how they go about implementing those targets. An example is they did set that they were going to have about 50,000 EVs, electric vehicles, in the country by 2017. I think by 2015 they had already achieved that. And what they did was they gave tax breaks, they gave free registration of EV vehicles so that the common man and residents of the country can afford it. And so you see policies like that. You also see how they invest huge sums of funds in energy research and innovation and technology, right? As at 2019 alone, they invested about 289 million euro on technology like hydrogen, like CCS that Tony mentioned, and the benefits that they get from their oil, revenue that they get from their oil and gas production has been invested in ensuring that they reduce the emissions on other sets. Of course, you find legal and regulatory framework. They have laws that encourage certifications with, in the real estate industry, where if you're into real estate, you must comply with their carbon targets in the real estate, in the agricultural sector, and across board, right? Public acceptance. They've also encouraged the citizens, right, to get involved in this energy transition. And so they encourage you to adopt certain smart technologies that enable you to also make money, right? Say, well, there's a smart meter that can capture certain level of solar energy. You store it and then resell it back to the utility when it's available. So these are examples that we can copy in Nigeria. What we've seen is our ETP plan, our ETP is robust, but there is no enforcement, right? So if the government takes ownership and responsibility for this energy transition, there would be movement. A lot, I mean, if you walk on the streets and you speak to somebody in the village saying, what do you know about energy transition? They don't know. Every day they're using firewood to cook, right? So there's no acceptance, there's no understanding in the first place about what this renewable energy, carbon reduction, emission reduction and whatever it is. And there is no plan. There's no enforcement of implementation of the plans that have been put in place ever since so that we can actually transit. So these are, I mean, Norway always, I mean, everything that Norway does is to reduce the carbon emission. And they're an oil and gas producer as well, like Nigeria, right? And they did not displace, they did not stop producing oil and gas, right? They rather maximize the benefit from the oil and gas to ensure that other sectors of the country actually reducing emissions. So those are, I mean, I've talked about policies, I've talked about legal and regulatory framework, I've talked about government taking ownership, and those are things that I believe are examples that we can copy as a country for successful.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Amina. You've stirred up in me now a desire to go and look at the Norwegian templates, and I think you've just said it all. We'll just take one round of questions, and then we'll come back to the audience to ask questions. I'm really glad with the level of contribution that has come from our panelists. Let me come back to you, Dayo. You sit at a vintage position of a lawyer that had seen different frames of policies and regulations being put in place. Have you at any time just thought about maybe if we tweak something here or something there, we can then move from policies that are formulated to really seeing the critical mass? I mean, if you had a chance to be speaking to the ears of our president today, what advice would you give him as to what will help us move the conversation from just talk that we are having right now, that we now start seeing transactions? Please.
Thank you, Peter. Money. It's all about money. You've got to make it attractive to business people to want to do it. Using the Norway example, Norfund, which disperses a lot of money, right? Everybody suddenly became sustainable when Norfund said, we'll not give you any money until you have a sustainability element or a green element. That's what led to the increase in hybrid projects worldwide and in Nigeria. Coming to Nigeria and your direct question, money, tax and fiscal incentives. There are already fiscal incentives from, you mentioned the PA. A company like yours took advantage of consolidation of upstream and downstream. That was good for a lot of companies. The PIA tried to push that forward. Wasn't ideal, but goes back to something else that has been said by the panel and our keynote speaker. We should seek to adopt, but we should not wholeheartedly. I laughed when you said, and I sent this to someone, when the UK started up one of their coal plants, and 3 years ago, somebody from the UK government told Nigeria not to burn coal. So we need to see best practices and adopt it here. So money, fiscal incentives, and then going into the mix of the sustainability aspects. We've talked about the Climate Change Act, which is a start but hasn't really gotten very far. Our keynote speaker spoke on that. But as of now, under the Climate Change Act, there was also provisions for a body and a panel and the idea of a carbon trading framework. If you make it, I sat in London with another law firm, with one of the largest mining companies, and you see everything is all about the money. One of the largest mining companies in Australia is buying up tracts of forestry in Africa so they can net off their carbon.
All right, thank you very much, Dayo. That's extremely insightful. Today, our installed power generation base in the country is about 26 gigawatts. What gets into our homes is between 4 and 5 gigawatts. No, our installed generation base is 26 gigawatts. What gets into our homes is just between 4 to 5 gigawatts. And in terms of transmission, our transmission capacity today is about 13 gigawatts. Now, there's a lot of attenuation that takes place between what we generate and what gets into our home. I'm not saying we generate 26. I said our installed base is 26 gigawatts. And it's factual. I stand on that. No, not including captive. Grid power generating base, we're up to 26 gigawatts. And in terms of transmission, we can actually handle up to about 13 gigawatts. But what gets wheeled at the last mile into homes is somewhere between 4 to 5 gigawatts. So there's a lot of, yeah, I mean, well, in the best of times over the last few years, you get 4 point something gigawatts. So now, I mean, one of the key issues that people have pointed at, still on this issue of resilience, is about the architecture. We have one single integrated architecture for generating, transmitting, and distributing our generated power. And I'd like you to look at this critically, and let's talk about it from the perspective of resilience. To what extent has this been useful to us, and is there a case for decentralized distribution or decentralized transmission as part of improving our resilience? Please, would you like to share some thoughts?
All right, thank you, Gbite. Firstly, the fact that decentralized energy system is a departure from the traditional energy production is hopeful in the first stance, because it is a known fact, like we've all heard, that our grid infrastructure is dilapidated and is outlived its lifespan. We don't know how much, we are not seeing the advancement, we're not seeing the replacement. So of course, decentralized energy systems would work. Building small-scale energy solutions to a cluster residential, commercial, or industrial customers that is not connected to the general grid or the centralized grid is the answer. For example, you can use the north, where you'd have a higher mix of solar because of the abundance of sunlight there, and then you'd have less of gas, and then of course wind as well. There's some research that wind would work, like somebody mentioned 10 megawatt in Katsina, if actually exists, right? To say if there's a balance of that and you dedicate that plant alone, that system alone to Katsina, for example, you would find that there would be reliability in Katsina, right? Because whatever happens to gas pressure, gas supply, vandalization of the pipeline, and all of those things will not affect it, unlike we're experiencing right now. So of course, that, because again, when you're building that energy, localized energy system, you're also considering new infrastructure in distribution, and it's closer to the customer, right? So that kind of decentralized solution actually is the only way out right now. The capital, the amount of capital that is needed to invest or overhaul the grid is huge. But where you have private investors, private entities coming to the space and start to do mini grid, micro grid, and all of this, it helps, right, to take away the burden, right, from, and the Electricity Act, right, has actually also sort of encourages this, right? Now it gives the states rights to generate, transmit, and distribute its own power. So you'd start to find decentralized systems, energy systems across board, right? I cannot overemphasize the access it gives, right? Because it's closer to you, and then it addresses the access problem. And then, of course, the resilience is the infrastructure is going to be new, right? And then you can be assured that if you're focusing on a state to build a small-sized energy solution for a state, you've put into consideration, of course, you would have done your feasibility studies, you've done your audit, and it in fact reduces energy loss and energy theft, right? Because you would have to install smart meters, right? And then you'd be able to measure from where you've built your plant to the last mile consumer, and then you'd be able to track that there is no loss, right? So I believe that's the best solution that we can give. At Genesis Energy, one of the things that we do, we're not just an energy infrastructure when it comes to gas. What we also do is we are mandated because of the climate change, whatever, to also go into renewable energy. And one of the first things we did, or we are doing, is also mini grids, right? So you go to these communities, not just necessarily for the World Bank grants and whatever, but, just to be able to prove, right? We also want to test ourselves that in Nigeria, these solar solutions can actually work on a large scale. We have them in small scales with power, telecom sites, and all of that, but those are small scale. But for large scale, to test and prove that this energy solution, decentralized energy solution works, and it's been working greatly. So I believe, in a nutshell, that's the solution.
Fantastic. Please, a round of applause for Amina. Thank you very much. And would I say also that at Aradel we are also charting a different course? Yes, we've been known for our integrated play across upstream, oil and gas into midstream. Recently, we just took off on the renewable space. As I speak today, we are deploying mini grid solution to 5 villages right now. We did a technical commissioning about a month ago. And under that space now, 1,200 homes are getting connected to electricity for the first time. The whole idea of everybody trying to feed off from one integrated national grid is just not sustainable. There's a place for the integrated master grid, but there is a place for also isolated mini grids as well. And it's a combination of those that will get us to the energy security status we're looking for. Please, can we put a round of applause together again for our panel? I know they've unpacked so much, and our time is fast spent, but I think we can take 1 or 2 questions from the audience or further contribution. So please, if you would like to contribute to the conversations we've just had, or you'd like to probe further any of the comments that we have made, this is the time to do that. Yes, please. Can we please give...
Principal consultant at Apax Advisory, an energy consulting firm, and also I wear a hat as Executive Secretary of the Association of Local Distributors of Gas. Mine is a contribution, just to say, you know, as to further emphasize, right, on the need for us to fashion our own path. And for me, you know, the energy transition also means that we're transiting from dirtier fuels to cleaner fuels, you know, with renewables as the ultimate destination, if you like, right? But if I move from using coal to oil, or using oil to gas, I have transited and have reduced emissions. And I wanted to just, in that sense, say, you know, that therefore I want us to also start exploring, you know, opportunities for mini grids using gas, using all the various ways in which you can take gas to end users, CNG, LNG, LPG, because in that way, what are you doing? You're displacing people who are using petrol, you're displacing people who are using diesel, right? And the mini grids with solar. I mean, we all think mini grids is now solar. If you say some mini grids, just think it's solar. Mini grids is just the centralized grid architecture, right? But for us to think about that, because in that sense, we've proven that it's a system that works, people are paying, and for people like Genesis Energy, Aradel to start thinking, if you're going to the power space and meeting this huge unmet demand, how can we use, you know, such technologies, especially for industrial clusters, right? If you go to Kano, people are using diesel to manufacture. I think I heard somebody say that's 181 kilowatts per hour. The tariff is 181 kilowatts using diesel at 1,000 naira. In Kano, it's 1,200 naira today. So huge opportunity, and perhaps it's a time for us to think that, yes, solar is there, but there's a lot more that we can use to reduce emissions. We'll still be polluting, but we're reducing the emissions and getting people off dirtier fuels, therefore reducing our emission footprint. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yes, please go ahead, Dayo.
Okay. Thank you. Oga, I agree with you fully. And that's why I made the earlier point of we must adopt for our environment. The in-house people would have heard this. Nigeria doesn't have oil. We're an island of oil in an ocean of gas. An island of oil. All the oil you think we have. All the oil that makes us as powerful as we could be if we weren't so corrupt. Sorry, I'm not supposed to say that. But the gas, we could be Qatar and Saudi combined. So gas is not going anywhere. And the size of this country and the infrastructure, renewables cannot power us. So it has to be gas. That's why the companies like Aradel, Genesis, those that are utilizing it, and it has to be, and I'm saying it because, Gbite made this point, I think a lot of times why they want lawyers that are practicing is because we see so many transactions, the good, bad, ugly, the ones that have failed. The future of power generation in Nigeria is gas-linked. You cannot walk away from that, and that's the majority of it. And it's franchise, broken up mini grids. Just so, like Amina said, you have a ring-fenced source of power in different parts. And that's what the Electricity Act will do. Lagos State, I saw a proposal, Elisha wants to do their own power, this part will do their own power, Gigawatt will, and then you have the virtual networks for the gas that will push it there. That's actually cheaper. So everything with wind and solar is good, but it's supplementary to what we need to do with gas. Thank you.
And I wanted to add, sorry, Peter. I wanted to add to Oga that when it comes to the decentralizing, Genesis has actually played a significant role in that. We deployed the first micro LNG to Kano State. The gas is coming from Port Harcourt's LNG and is to an industry, right, who's bleeding on diesel. We're going to our second year anniversary on that plant. And of course, we have hotels and all commercial and other industries lined up for that. So this is something that we do. We know is the solution. We were in Mali earlier last year. We also deployed the first LPG in-country micro LPG to also an agro-allied industry, right? So these are things that we see, and we go ahead, not waiting for government to put in the infrastructure. As far as virtual pipeline can get there, we go ahead and establish.
Hello, good afternoon, and well done to a fantastic panel. My name is Ibilola Amao, Principal Consultant at Lonadec Global Services. I've listened to quite a lot of what you've said today, but I kind of see a disconnect with bridging the gap between industry and academia, because if we don't really have education, enlightenment, empowerment, engagement, and entrepreneurship, which are the 5 E's of national development and socioeconomic transformation, we're not going to solve these problems at the grassroots. How are we connecting what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve to the final year projects in our universities, the PhD research programs we're doing, the education curriculum, and how are we empowering our youths to ensure that we can actually execute the theory and the fantastic plans we have? I'd like to know from each of the panelists what you're doing in your own capacity personally and what your companies are doing. Thank you so much.
Okay. 30 seconds each.
Yes, so thank you. We are not here to make photocopies. We are not here to make food. We are not here to do school runs on behalf of your bosses. You are here to learn. So we empower them, and they do the work which some of us already do. There's no shying away from it, and you need to get your hands dirty. So we have engineers, we have petrophysicists, we have economists, and we are dragging them everywhere we go. We're exposing them, and we're empowering them for the future workplace. I think in our own little way, at least, we're making that connection. In terms of academia, yes, we're not there. We don't have any deliberate plan to reach out to the academia. We don't have those sort of exchange programs. We don't have visiting professors coming to our institution, but that's food for thought. Thank you very much. I'll take it back to the management.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's just do 30 minutes touchdown on this, or 30 seconds.
30 seconds, yeah.
Sorry.
So in GE, we actually run a Next Engineers program where we partner with specific institutions across the region, mentor young engineers, encourage female engineers as and mentor them. And then even we go all the way to secondary schools as well to encourage more girls in STEM education, you know. So we do that, and then, you know, we bring in a lot of interns as well. And as much as possible, we try to sort of ensure that, you know, we get the knowledge in the industry and what we do to transfer into the work that they do in the university. On a personal front, I mentor quite a lot of people who are, you know, actively trying to get into the energy industry, or sort of early career professionals in the energy industry. But I would say that there's definitely more to do there. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
It more or less same idea. The only way you can educate is to actually educate. So at Templars, we do it in a practical way. We have something called Experience Templars. University students come in, see what it's like in the day and life of the lawyer weeks. We do the internships. I believe, and you've mentioned this, I'm a product of mentorship. You must pay it forward. So education, what I mean by educate is practical, not academic. Professional education and exposure. And I'll close with this. I've been an oil and gas lawyer almost 25 years. Anyone that asks me and they say they want to do energy, I said, well, then the future is gas and renewables. I'm a dinosaur. So don't look at me and want to be like me, because you won't have a career by the time you're my age. So it is that practical, seeing what is done, actually giving, showing. That's the way we at Templars and myself personally look at education. Thank you.
At Genesis Energy, every year we write to NYSC That's the National Youth Service Corps. I don't want to be quoted. And we write to them every year to send us engineers yearly. And all these engineers, after being trained amongst in the company, they're deployed to our different power plants, right, for direct, and immediately they are hired after we retain them after the NYC. Just last week, I think, we also attended I think a YES program that involved final year students just to guide them on how to entrance into the energy sector. So we do quite a lot for, I think in the last 3-5 years, all the corpers that have been sent to the office have been retained.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm not expected to answer that question. I'm moderator. I'm the one to be asking everybody to answer the question. But the question you asked, Ibilola, is very profound. First, what do? We already put many people on scholarships to go to school. We provide opportunities for internship and for direct hand-holding. Recently, we just commenced a process of intake of young, fresh graduates. And it's very painful when you see how many talented young people we have in this country. We just brought in a batch of 25 young, talented people across different areas that we're going to, and that we are grooming right now. But where I think the profoundness of the question is, it's not this sort of, I do this, I do that. It's what impact can we make in curriculum that already produces people? Because at times you take people and you know you have a rebuild to do in terms of orientation and all of that. And I think that's a question we should all take home. In our individual and corporate worlds, what can we do to bridge that gap between the academia and the industry? How can we influence even the basis of training and instruction to reflect what obtains now? I mean, there are lecturers that are still using the same lecture notes 25 years ago to teach people today. And things have really changed. And I think for me, that's the takeaway. And thank you for probing our thoughts on that. The intention, okay, one final word from Prof. Prof is academia, as far as we are concerned.
Thank you very much for recognizing Elder in your midst. But thank you also for your comment. I don't want us to look at this energy transition and leave the academia out. Again, a nation cannot grow faster than its intellectual community. And what we've seen in Nigeria thus far is the living out of the academia. They have the tools, the business is supposed to use that tool, and the industry is supposed to use the tool as well. So I actually commend your comment about that. But let me just say one final thing with respect to the academia. Don't think that we are not practical. No. But if there's anything you need to learn as an emerging company, is to look at a company that I'm very proud to be associated with. And even if you don't like their name, I will mention it. It's Shell. And the way to look at training people, even during their professional life, is to go beyond when you are training them to the future. Go to the oil and gas industry today. Look at all the emerging indigenous oil and gas companies. Look at those participating. Some of the things they are using is because of the type of training they received when they were junior engineer, middle-level manager engineers, and that's going to be my encouragement to GE, to my friend Gas Aggregation. Training is key for sustainable development. But if you are going to go to energy transition and you don't prepare your capacity to manage it, you are going to be going through the same thing. And finally, when I worked for this company that I mentioned my name, honestly, there was no expatriate along my reporting line. And that was 40 years ago today. Good afternoon, sir. Yes, and we have one of those too. Yes, no expatriate. But what do you have today? That is going to be the same thing that will happen with energy transition if we don't build capacity in anticipation. And of course, I just validated myself because I didn't want to speak before.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for indulging us. I think we've come to the end of this session. The intention was to have a final parting word from every one of us, but I'll take the question we responded to as our final parting shot. And please join me to appreciate this wonderful panel that have done justice to our topic today and to our keynote speaker.